Hello everyone and welcome to this session on demystifying semantic intelligence for enabling intelligent applications as part of this AICTE sponsored Atal FDP. I am Sarika Jain from NIT Kurukshetra. My talk today revolves around advocating the hybrid of syntactic and the semantic approaches to artificial intelligence, paving way to intelligent applications. The agenda of the session is the presentation of scientific and technical overview, discussion of the two paradigms in AI research, defining and detailing the need of semantic intelligence, the enabling technologies, knowledge graph as a semantic data model, the semantic web vision, the linked open data cloud. And before closing the session, it will bring to the audience an overview of the trends in semantic intelligence technologies and where it goes along. Let us start with the scientific and technical overview, which brings along with it what are smart or intelligent applications, what AI can do, the problems and challenges, and knowledge management. So what is a smart application? What are smart or intelligent applications? Artificial intelligence is the intelligence exhibited by software or machines. You all are aware of the same. It is a branch of computer science that aims to create intelligent machines, mimicking human behavior. An intelligent app doesn't make the diagnosis, but it can sort through massive data sets, looking for patterns, looking for potential diseases and treatments as an example. The intelligent applications are developing along two distinct functional use cases. The first being automating simple routine tasks to save the value time. Example being personal virtual assistants, managing schedules and coordinating meetings without user intervention. The another functional use case can be to provide right data at right time and in proper context. Example being an online doctor providing decision support. He sorts massive data sets, look for patterns, and then recommend potential diseases and treatments. Let us have a look on the trajectory of technological progress starting from the 90th century BC. Pre-90th century BC, use of fire, wheel, language came into being. During the same reign came the first industrial revolution, or truly speaking, between 90th century BC to 1900. It was development of civilization, printing press, electricity, steam engines, governments came into being, and the first industrial revolution was there in 1784. Then in 1870, it was second industrial revolution with electricity. From 1900 till the present time, worldwide use of electricity was there. Planes, telephone, radio, television, computers, the internet. Third industrial revolution 1969 with IT, information technology came into being. Today it is the age of fourth industrial revolution with three levels of technological progress. Before 2016, it was ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, as an ability to carry out a specific task, say play chess, get information based on voice. For example, Siri and Alexa, spot the spam email, driverless cars, AlphaGo. ANI is in fact the current state of the art. From 2020 onwards, that is today, it is the AI's golden age. Artificial general intelligence, AGI, we call it it is the ability to carry out different tasks that a human could do. So the researchers say it will go from 2020 to 2050. From 2050 onwards, ASI, artificial superintelligence age, will start as an ability to learn from the experiences and from new data, to perform a wide range of actions, also to generate new computer code on its own to help achieve its objectives. What AI can do? Let us have a quick glimpse on what AI can do. In games, IBM Deep Blue conquers world chess champion Garry Kasparov. May 2017, Google AlphaGo wins over world #1 Go player He was a Chinese, Qi Ji. IBM Watson, a chatbot, competes on Jeopardy and defeats the TV quiz show's two biggest all-time champions. It also won US $1 million. IBM has donated the full amount to charity. Watson in today's date supports 11 languages, to be specific, as of March 2020. Another example can be semantic search. From May 2012, Google decided to call it semantic search as knowledge graph. We will have certain examples also as the time passes. You can see one example here. Tom Cruise, if you search for, you get an info box on the right hand side with complete details of the person you have searched for. So this is not simple search, it is semantic search. Then it is digital assistant, September 2015, Badu's personal assistant. Needless to mention that Badu is a Chinese Google. So Badu's personal assistant Duer accepting orders at KFC restaurants in China. October 2011, Apple's Siri answers questions and make recommendations. Siri is a natural language UI to answer questions and make recommendations. It also performs actions by delegating requests to some personal web services. It is a digital assistant, yes. Let us have a look on some problems and challenges of intelligent applications. Data silos as demos. The word is very loosely coupled. The IT world of today comprises of many operating systems, many high-level languages, many types of networks, and so on. There is multi-source data. You are aware of data warehouses, data lakes, files, analytic platforms, cloud services, and APIs. Also, there are various heterogeneous information assets, files, tables, code, dashboards. The data is also presented in various heterogeneous formats, CSV, JSON, XML, simple text. These can be, we can say, a bit of structured. Then there is unstructured text. There is semi-structured text. Another problem I want to bring forward to you is interoperability. Because what if required to combine results from multiple and heterogeneous resources? How do we define interoperability? It is the exchange of information achieved only when this exchange of information can be achieved only when common representation is used between different systems. And then we say that we have achieved interoperability. Big data, that is the information overload. Due to many technological advances, technological trends, huge data is generated daily and at also unprecedented rates. The so-called 3 V's, viz volume, variety, velocity, pose numerous challenges in storage and processing of this huge data. We need to make this data an enabler, and addressing this gap has been an important and well-recognized interdisciplinary area of computer science. IoT data, social data, data on the web, the cyber data, event information, Wikipedia, we can see it as a collective intelligence. There is a variety of open data available on web. The curated knowledge, various vocabularies available, taxonomies, knowledge graphs. We call them in general ontologies, as we will look forward. The next problem is poorly solved information needs. Example can be search engines giving documents but not data. So the engines are not giving answer to the specific question, and they do not support very precise or structured queries. The vague queries are posed and they do not give a specific answer to those queries. Yes, of course, with certain exceptions which have started now. Redundancy is a problem and a challenge. What is redundancy? Same entity represented by multiple surface forms. Barack Obama, we say Barack H. Obama, President Obama, Senator Obama, we say President of United States. So in various redundant forms, the same term is represented and stored in different formats. The different data sets may talk about the same entity, but with using different URIs. Just look at this example also. Tim Berners-Lee. In DBpedia, You can see it like this. In Wikidata, you can see it like this. And with a constraint owl, same as we put it in our ontology. I will detail it later on. So one of the problems is mostly unstructured and at times semi-structured data, as I've already told while I was explaining data silos. Some more, for example, scalability, referring to the properties of a system, an organization, a function, to cope and perform well, a growing amount of work. How does it do it? By adding resources daily whenever required. Then vastness, SNOMED CT ontology alone contains thousands, 370,000 class names. Vagueness, imprecise concepts like young and tall. Whether it is young, whether it is tall, it's not, we do not have a precise answer. Fuzzy logic solves this problem. Uncertainty, precise concepts with uncertain values. A patient might present a set of symptoms which correspond to a number of different distinct diagnoses, each with a pretty different probability. So probabilistic reasoning comes into picture to solve the problem of uncertainty, but yes, to only some extent. Inconsistency is the logical contradictions that can be made. Deceit, that is misleading information. We have various cryptographic techniques to handle the problem and challenge of deceit in the intelligent applications. There is a paradigm shift from data to knowledge. This is the gist of today's talk, in fact, and a motivation as a start of defining what is semantic intelligence. The DIKW pyramid. Data, as you can see here, refers to raw data, the raw facts, numbers, symbols, whether unstructured or structured, whether online or sensor. So this complete form, in different forms, we call it data. When it is not structured in a manner so that it can deliver some proper information to it, or it is put in certain context. So we know nothing from data. We cannot extract anything from data. What is information? This data, when put in certain context adds value to the meaning of data. Context adds, we can say, meaning to the data. For example, I speak a figure 2006, 2020. In the context of date, we can recognize that as I spoke 2006, 2020. We can recognize it at 20th June, 2020. So it gets meaning and becomes information. Otherwise, it was just data with no information, no context. Another example can be a telephone service providing telephone numbers on request, but information define relationships also. You know the who, you know what, when, where of data. And now you have meaning in data to some extent. What is knowledge? Knowledge comes above information. How is the information that is derived from the collected data becomes relevant to our goals? When we are able to make this information relevant to our goals, it becomes knowledge to us. That is, understanding the patterns to make it relevant to the goal. Explicit information, a clear awareness is there. You know the how of everything. We call it knowledge. The pieces of information connect to add more meaning and value. Ready to achieve the goal. If you have done the basic courses in AI, what we call rules, that is knowledge in this DIKW pyramid. When we uncover relationships that are not explicitly stated, we get knowledge. The relationships which are not explicitly stated, that is the implicit information when we get, we say we do have the knowledge. We say that we have the knowledge. Next comes understanding. Understanding is some form of stored knowledge. As the table of two, the kids learn the table of two, and learning is okay. The table of two, they have the knowledge of it. But if they properly understand how the table of two is written, then they will be able to answer difficult questions like 1230 into 45, if they know the tables, if they understand the tables, not only know, if they understand the tables, then they will be able to quickly solve the multiplication problems. This is we call understanding. Knowledge is memorizing something. Understanding is when you learn it by heart. That is when you are able to synthesize new knowledge from already existing knowledge. We call it understanding. Through judgment and action, through intelligence, through shared understanding, you are able to achieve what is called wisdom. That is understanding principles, and you act using knowledge. You know the best and why that best is there. Example of wisdom, one example of wisdom can be the ancient preachings also, the ancient preachings and sayings. Let me look at the chat also. If I interrupt in between, if you people have any queries of any sort, I will request you to put them in chat box. At this particular slide, I will like to look at the chat box if there are certain queries. Whether shared understanding, Mr. Dinesh has raised a query, whether shared understanding is domain knowledge. I will say no specifically. Shared understanding is understanding as I have decided. Knowledge can be a domain knowledge or a general knowledge. So understanding is when you are able to apply your knowledge for bringing out some action. It can be from domain knowledge or it can be from generalized knowledge. So shared understanding is not to be specific, only the domain knowledge. Knowledge can be domain knowledge also. Mr. Dinesh, you can unmute your mic also if you have understood. Okay, let me take the next one. What is the difference between semantic web and present day web? Yes, guys, before answering, okay, I'll answer this one question, but before answering this query, I'll like to appraise you all with the fact that it will be always beneficial if we go slowly. And all your queries regarding semantic web, the semantic web vision, what is linked open data cloud, what are semantic technologies, OWL, RDF, SparkQuell, reasoning, representation, JSON format, RDF format, SCOs, all of them, and applying them to various applications will be answered gradually as the session passes and as the various session pass. So I will request the participants to kindly go through the session plan and look into the titles so that we do not waste much of our time in handling the queries which definitely have to come along, which definitely gradually have to come. To answer it in a very specific manner, semantic web adds semantics to web. Semantic web gives more importance to data as compared to documents. A very simple example, as I've just taken also, the semantic search is in semantic web, not in web. In web, when you search, take example of Google search, when you search, you get a list of documents and you have to open each document to get answer of your query. It is not so in what we call semantic web, because semantic web is giving importance to data. With all the documents in place, there is metadata also, and with semantic web we search into metadata and then link documents back so that some specific answer can be given. The query answering can be done instead of giving documents as output. Knowledge representation, it means I'm not able to knowledge interpretation. Yes, you can say knowledge interpretation. You are repeating your question of shared understanding with domain knowledge. Yes, you can say to some extent interpreting knowledge, bringing out the implicit knowledge and bringing them to actions is what is shared understanding. That is applying your wisdom. After going through these queries, I will provide some more examples of the difference between knowledge and wisdom. I think then it will be more clear. Ma'am, how understanding different from intelligence? Okay, I'll come to it. Dear all, please let finish the presentation, then we can ask questions. Yes, that is true. If they are related to whatever I have already spoken, then yeah, questions can be welcome. If they are related to what I have already spoken, I repeat. So I come back to my presentation. I hope it is visible to you people. So let us come with some more examples. Data, I start with data. I say it is raining, and the second fact I say is temperature is below 15 degree. It is raining and the temperature is below 15 degree. What is information? Both these facts are related in some manner. How they are related? When the temperature went below 15 degree, then it started raining. So now this data is useful to me, and it is put in certain context when I say when the temperature went below 15 degree, then it started raining. If I come to knowledge, then knowledge is finding patterns and predicting something. Finding patterns and predicting something. If I take the same example, I add a rule. As I've just told you, knowledge is you add rules to your system. Let me add a rule. If humidity is high, temperature is below 15 degree, atmosphere is unlikely to hold moisture, then we say that it rains. I repeat, if humidity is high, what I said, atmosphere is unlikely to hold moisture and temperature is below 15 degree, yes, then we say that it rains. So now knowledge, you are able to capture the knowledge, you are able to understand some pattern. Now you can do some pattern matching. As soon as you find high humidity, you find a temperature below 15 degree and the third one also, then we say that it rains. What is wisdom? Wisdom encompasses various things, whether they are said or they are unsaid. Wisdom encompasses various said and unsaid things, I should say. For example, while defining the data, information and knowledge, we didn't speak about evaporation. We didn't speak about current and many other processes. So I'll say that only humans have wisdom. Computers in today's date cannot apply wisdom. They do not have it. I think I'm done for this slide. I can take the queries later on also. So I proceed further. So yes, I've already done it. We don't have to look back into the past, but we have to look into the future. We are moving from less meaning to more meaning. We are moving from less applicability to more applicability. We are moving from, that is, we are deriving value which is equivalent to human beings. We are moving from data management to knowledge management, from data science to knowledge science. We need to climb up the mountain of wisdom. We have to reach the wisdom. What I'm saying with we, I mean the machines, they have to reach the wisdom. And semantic technologies make it possible by creating links between disparate and heterogeneous data. So what in fact is knowledge management, and how does it differ from data management or information management? I have brought this Wikipedia definition in front of you. I read it out. Knowledge management is the process of creating, sharing, using and managing the knowledge and information of an organization. It refers to a multidisciplinary approach to achieve organizational objectives by making the best use of knowledge. That is knowledge management, and that is what we need to achieve. The knowledge management as compared to data management, as compared to information management. Knowledge management is a discipline for the systematic management of knowledge assets with a goal to capture insight and better understanding for meeting the tactical and strategic requirements. Knowledge management is on the way to achieve wisdom. for better understanding, so that we are able to meet the tactical and strategic requirements, that is to achieve wisdom. And also the knowledge assets, as I mentioned, I'm talking of both explicit as well as the implicit assets. The various issues involved being knowledge types, as I already told. Tacit, that is the implicit, experience based and context dependent. Explicit, the codified knowledge that are found in the databases that are already codified. Another issue is representation, providing high level descriptions of the world that can be stored effectively by the computer. Storage is storing the knowledge as the data is stored. Another issue is reasoning, that is processing. We call it inference also. Finding implicit consequences from the explicitly represented knowledge, as I'm already telling you again and again. Explicit is there, already codified. We have to bring out the implicit knowledge also. By virtue of reasoning, we will be able to do that. We have codified the explicit knowledge by means of certain representation scheme, stored the same in a knowledge store, and then we are able to perform reasoning over the explicit knowledge to bring out certain implicit consequences in order to attain understanding for meeting the tactical and strategic requirements and bring in the competitive advantage, hence achieving wisdom. So let us come to the difference between information management and knowledge management. One by one. I don't know whether it is visible or not. Okay, let it be. Let us try to read and I will speak. It is very small. Definition is practice of collecting, managing and distributing. Yeah, who is speaking?
Visible, madam. Visible.
Yeah. I like to discuss with you after I pause to some extent. If there is really a problem, I like you to kindly write in the chat so that other technical staff can handle that. And let me know also. Control and shift plus plus, you want to make me do that. So that will work in PPT, but that is not working here. Okay, I think we can go ahead with the same. So it is the information management is the practice of collecting, managing and distributing information. I've already told you. Knowledge management is the process of capturing, distributing and effectively using the knowledge. It's about how people are learning, how they are validating, how they are creating and sharing knowledge. That is the difference. Come back to the definition of information management. Look at the bracket. And not opinions and intuitions are not available in information management, but we do them in knowledge management, so we get better answers. Information management manages data and information only. In knowledge management, we are going for structured information, the understanding and the wisdom. The capabilities here are very rigid, limited. For example, the traditional RDBMS we are using. While for knowledge management, we have a fluid pool of standardized data elements. As we look through the sessions, we will get to look at the various capabilities of knowledge management and the various technologies available. Information management centers on the processes. It is technology driven. While knowledge management is people driven. People are more important. How they want to look at information and how they will be able to judge it. That is the people, process and management driven. Information management emphasizes on the explicit characteristic only, while knowledge management looks for both tacit and explicit characteristics. When we come to measurement, then yes, it can be measured quantitatively in short time frames, and here it is measured by changes in the behavior and the work capabilities of the individuals and teams over time. So change management is also there. Information is useful but very easy to replicate, so uniqueness is not there. While knowledge management leads to innovations, it is every knowledge is unique to a company, thereby providing the competitive advantage. That is also the most important thing. And yes, of course, there is only knows what, that is facts and numbers, the stats. But here we have know how, that is action, experience, and innovation. So I hope I am able to bring in front of you in a collective form the difference between information management and knowledge management, and now the participants may be aware of the same. So the next agenda of the session is the two paradigms of AI research. I'll go through the symbolic, the sub-symbolic, that is the two approaches of AI, contextual computing, that is the hybrid of the two approaches, and after that certain excerpts from literature. But for a minute, I like to look if there is some question from the previous session pending. Not exactly. So you could write in the middle of the session, so that as soon as the session, as soon as one agenda point is finished, I can look into it. So I get back to my presentation. What is symbolic AI? The two paradigms in AI research, I emphasize again. I'm going through the two paradigms in AI research, the symbolic, sub-symbolic approaches. So what is symbolic approach? What is symbolic AI? Expert systems, the previous expert systems, to some extent, I should say they're gone for today. We call it good old-fashioned AI, rules engine, the traditional AI, what we study in Patterson, what we study in Rich and Knight. You, all of you, if you have gone through some AI course, you might have studied that. The first attempts to AI, 1950s till 80s mainly. I say 1980s. Knowledge representation plus rules, constraints, and other symbolic logic was there. Tools and techniques found in standard AI books, if I name a few: propositional logic, first order predicate, calculus, Lisp, Prolog. People used to code in Lisp and Prolog. If then statements, if man X, if you remember, man is mortal example, we used to teach, branch and bound, heuristic search, A-star search, and all. In these tools and techniques and algorithms, there is no algorithmic training involved. It is, yes, it is very dynamic, verifiable, and an explainable model. The symbolic AI, I think the image is clear in your mind. It is the good old-fashioned AI, the traditional AI. Now let us have a look a bit on the problems with the symbolic AI. Why we are looking forward to semantic intelligence? What was the problem in only artificial intelligence? This symbolic AI is not able to imitate all the processes of human cognition, especially perception, robotics, learning, and pattern recognition. Not able to imitate them properly. Stephen Harnard is a scientist from Princeton University. In 1999, he proposed that if symbols can be manipulated by a robot, then they are sufficiently grounded in the real world, and the robot could be said to literally understand. The rules are created through human intervention. So yes, it is costly, it is time consuming. Humans have to codify all the rules. If you can remember in Prolog, how do we work? We have only two things. We have facts, we have rules. So we need to codify all the rules. Yes, it is costly and time consuming. Another problem is monotonicity. In English, you know what is monotonicity. In here, we say that additional rules can't undo old knowledge. That is difficulty of belief revision. The good old-fashioned AI, there is difficulty of revising beliefs once they are encoded in the rules engine. Expert systems, they were monotonic. That is, the more rules we add, the more knowledge is encoded. That is true. But if we add some additional rules which contradict some previous rule, then we are not able to undo the old knowledge. That is called being monotonic. Ye to chipak gaya hai. We call it being monotonic. But what we want in real senses a change. If some new rule has come, which is, it should overwrite the old rule, I should say. We want non-monotonicity. Monotonicity is basically one direction. That is, when one thing goes up, another also goes up. That is why we have a difficulty of belief revision. The system is not able to learn. The system is not able to grow. We have, yes, certain solutions to monotonicity, and machine learning algorithms is the best one amongst them. The machine learning algorithms can encode tentative knowledge, which can be retraced later. Because ML algorithms can be retrained on the new data. Once ML algorithms require training, yes, but they can be retrained on new data. And they are able to revise the parameters also based on the new data. So retraining is possible there. So non-monotonicity comes into picture in that manner. They are better at encoding tentative knowledge. The knowledge is always tentative, and you can always retract it. You can always revise it if necessary. That is, if need to learn something new, then like when data is non-stationary, then you want to learn something new. So ML algorithms make it possible for us. I continue with the problems with symbolic AI. The symbol grounding problem is a very important problem. How do the words or symbols get their meaning? The symbols may not link to any other non-symbolic representation understandable by computers. This is the problem. It is analogous with the Chinese dictionary problem. For example, you want to learn Chinese. You have a Chinese dictionary and you want to learn Chinese. How difficult it will be. We have a famous Chinese room argument for this by American philosopher John Searle. He imagines himself alone in a room responding to Chinese characters which are slipped from the door inside the room, and he is able to respond back in Chinese so that the other person will mistake him as he is a Chinese speaker. Though he doesn't know Chinese at all, he is immediately feeding those Chinese characters to a computer and getting a response, and he is slipping it back out of the room. The computers are merely using syntactic rules to manipulate the symbols, but they have no understanding of meaning. So where is the solution? Where is the solution to this symbol grounding problem? The symbols may not link to other non-symbolic representation understandable by computers. Yes, I've already gone through it. Solution to the symbol grounding problem: neural nets can link symbols to the vectorized representations because they're able to ground symbols. They're able to relate them to other forms of meaning that would allow the computers to map the changing sensations, to map the changing raw sensations of the world with various different symbols and then perform reasoning. For example, the symbol Alice, how does it map to the real world Alice? So that is a problem. How does it map to the real world Alice? This is the symbol grounding problem. Yes. Okay. The point here to emphasize is that symbolic reasoning is, yes, very adequate for reasoning, but about mathematics, but about very small closed systems. That is, we call it the closed word assumption also. I'll speak on it later on. So symbolic reasoning is very adequate, but for small systems which are closed in some manner with very defined properties, well-defined properties. As I already stated, the game of chess. Unfortunately, multiple dead ends are there which are reached and it has to stop. There is no learning involved, and which is what machine learning algorithms will provide to the pure symbolic AI. So let us come to what is sub-symbolic AI. As I was repeatedly telling that ML algorithms are a solution to the problems of symbolic AI. Let us have a quick glimpse of what it is in fact, what is sub-symbolic AI. As I already mentioned, from 1980 onwards, till 1980, it was the boom of symbolic AI research. So from 1980 onwards, sub-symbolic AI came into being. It is an approach to intelligence without specific representations of knowledge. This is a problem, in fact, in sub-symbolic AI, but this is the definition also, that sub-symbolic approach to AI manages to approach the intelligence of machines without making any specific representations of knowledge. What I mean to say is the algorithm learns rules as it establishes correlations between inputs and outputs. It keeps on learning rules also because it is able to retrain itself, so it can learn new rules. Connectionist AI is, we call it. Statistical AI also we call it. Connectionist AI got its name from the typical network topology that most of the algorithms in this class employ. There are various variations that have appeared for sub-symbolic AI. For example, embodied AI, that is robotics, computational intelligence and soft computing, fuzzy systems, neural networks, mostly connectionist approaches like ANN, support vector machines, and deep learning. Then there is statistical AI, 1990 onwards, which utilize the mathematical tools like HMM, Bayesian decision theory, and all. Machine learning falls under the umbrella of artificial intelligence only, which is providing systems with the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed, as I told in beginning, that no specific representations of knowledge exist. Learn automatically and adjust to actions also automatically. That is what machine learning is. So why, let us have certain examples. Why are we using this sub-symbolic AI? Without being explicitly programmed, machines are able to execute a task. Machines are learning automatically, and they are able to adjust also the various applications automatically. For example, an autonomous car driving on the road, driving on such a road which it has never seen before, is an example of sub-symbolic AI, because that autonomous car has the functionality of learning the new constraints or new obstacles that will come on its way on the new road that it is encountering today. So what we say is that AI research is becoming more scientific today. The results obtained are measurable. The results obtained are reproducible. What is the beauty of sub-symbolic AI? I have already stated certain examples. Let me have one more. It is a classic example of translating a note from, say, language A to language B. Say you had a man in a room. It is very much similar to the Chinese argument that I've just stated. Say you have a man in a room and his job was to translate. Now there is translation. Previously, it was befooling that he was a Chinese only. Now you have to translate from language A to B. Some notice slipped inside the room and he has to translate it back. But the problem is the man inside the room doesn't know that language B. How does he do now? So it seems like a very simple workflow. How simple? Simply slip the note, translate it, and get the note back. But what about if it is symbolic AI and he knows, he does not know the language B, but he has a huge library, a big dictionary from which he can go through the dictionary and translate from language A to language B. What he does, he receives the note, he makes the journey of skimming the complete corpus of the dictionary and then generating a reply and slipping the note back. I hope you can understand how difficult will it be. But if it was non-symbolic AI, that is sub-symbolic AI, then he will be able to learn the language B. We will make that machine learn the language and no dictionary is available in a sense to skim it, to read it. What he does now, he receives the note and now he knows the language, so he translates it fluently and sends it back. It may seem like that this sub-symbolic AI is such amazing, all encompassing magical solutions are coming out of it. No, there is an issue. The issue is that it's a bit complicated. Having only machine learning, having only some sub-symbolic AI will be a bit complicated to attain. We will see how. Because in fact, symbols will be in vacuum. Okay, I'll come back to it with more examples later on. Let me proceed further because I can see it is 10:47. I have 45 more minutes to go. Let me speak about problems with the machine learning approaches, problems with the sub-symbolic AI. Humans reason through high order semantic abstractions and machines through the blind adherence of statistics. So one problem is the cold start problem. Sub-symbolic AI is very, very data hungry. The people who are working with ML algorithms will appreciate it, that the whole approach of deep learning is based on an assumption that there will be enough data to learn and you are just craving for data sets. Another is black box AI, that is lack of model interpretability. Sub-symbolic AI automatically extracts patterns and rules from large data sets and automates the classification task. That is true. But why exactly things are classified in one way or another cannot be explained, because ML cannot extract the causalities. It cannot reflect on what is the cause and what is the action. It cannot bring in that, yes, it will run upon the rules, but it will not be able to comment upon back that which rules have been utilized to come upon which action. So you are not able to explain it, and we are missing the glass box AI. We are missing the explainable AI, which was there previously with expert systems, which was there with the symbolic approaches. And if humans are not explained of certain decision, then there is a risk of making a wrong decision, which may outweigh the benefits. If an individual is, for example, denied a loan, then yes, he has those rights to ask why this loan has been denied. But if only an ML algorithm is fed into the system to say yes or no to a loan application, then it will not be able to explain that why the loan has been denied. So it is coming as a major problem in the that is the black box AI. The same we can say, I've just modeled the language translation example. Language B was not at all difficult task. Learning the language B was not a difficult task, but the machine is not able to explain how it translates. Another problem is the sub-symbolic approaches are self-contained. They are not well integrated with the prior knowledge, making them brittle and easy to fool. They search for just correlations in data, but they do not look for the meanings in the data. Another is lacking a cushion of background knowledge or experiences. Yes, the deep learning algorithms are not able to distinguish between meaningful and spurious indications. The background knowledge is very important. The background knowledge and the experiences provide a context, provide the necessary context to reason about and to identify those patterns which are most like to represent the robust actionable knowledge. That is why the background knowledge is always important. If we use only the deep learning algorithms without any cushion of background knowledge, then these algorithms will not be able to distinguish between meaningful and the spurious indicators. Instead, they merely blindly encode the word according to the statistics rather than semantics. I take an example of outdoor cats, outdoor dogs, and indoor cats. The cats are mostly indoors. So the system has been trained with the same. That is, dogs are outdoor, the cats are indoor. How the training was made? The machine was trained with the various pictures of outdoor cats and outdoor dogs and indoor cats. But now this machine will fail to correctly categorize an outdoor cat. For example, the lion. It will not be able to categorize it as a cat because the picture is outside. So before it is unable to separate the objects from the context. In contrast, context, context is often critical in these type of recognition tasks. Let us take another example, the photograph of a battle tank. You can see a battle tank can be in the battle space, and a battle tank can be in the as a toy. It can be as a toy in the hand of a child. Now it depends how you have trained your machine. So seen in a desert sand, most human will label it as a tank. If it is seen in the child hand, people will label it as a toy. But that is not the case with a machine. A machine of today can be taught the difference, but it depends that which pictures have you used to train the machine. It makes a difference. It will not be able to distinguish between the patterns if it has been taught with one set of patterns only and not the others. So the patterns learned by machines are extremely brittle. Surface level observational visual characteristics of the input data, rather than the higher order abstractions which will permit them to connect those observations to external domain knowledge. Yes, this is missing in the sub-symbolic approaches. Continuing with the problems, there is diversity in training data is a problem. It is so critical to ensure that the machine is able to see a wide range of examples. As I've just told you, the outdoor cat example is not fed to the machine, only the indoor cat example is fed. So the diversity in training data is very important. Another is overfitting and underfitting. To describe it, I should say that the input features have to be very carefully selected and normalized also. If you have too many features or not having the representative data set that is very less features that covers most of the permutations, then it will lead to either overfitting or underfitting of the data. Stability assumption, the data-driven algorithms assume that the model of the world they are capturing is relatively stable. Then only the sub-symbolic approaches to AI will be able to aptly act upon it. Yes, there is a missing common sense reasoning. You know, Kaggle, from where most of the researchers fetch the data sets. It provides everything very neatly packaged as compared to the sporadic data that is coming from the real world. So the common sense is missing there. Deep learning till today, thus far, has struggled with open-ended inference. If you're not able to represent the nuance, for example, look at these two sentences. John promised Mary to leave. John promised to leave Mary. The machine is not able to draw the inferences about who is leaving whom or what is likely to happen next. So for handling monotonic reasoning, retraining is necessary again to adjust the new incoming data. No, I'm going out of context. Let us come to the another problem. Monotonic, yes. Exception handling. Monotonic, yes, I've already told you. Exception handling. Exceptions, you know, for the classical machine learning algorithms, exceptions, we will treat them as noise in machine learning. Exceptions are treated as noise, and you do not cater about the exception handling at all. For instance, you have a training set which consists of descriptions of various birds, classified as whether the bird can fly or not. Then the records concerning penguin and ostrich will most probably be treated as noise there. Either you will say whether a bird will fly or you will say the bird will not fly for ML algorithms. But this exception handling is a bit missing. Yes, we have problem with the mission critical applications. I do not know whether the images are clear or not. Yes, to some extent. The first image is school bus. Yes, I can see it to some extent. Out of distribution input is there. If there is out of distribution input, see this school bus, and it is wrongly classified as garbage truck. It is wrongly classified as punching bag. Similarly, the motor scooter classified as parachute. If it is tumbled down, again here it is classified as parachute by some ML algorithms. Similarly for fire truck, the surroundings of a vehicle can be effectively inferred by an ML algorithm, but only with a certain level of probability. We have no idea of which scenario will make it fail. So to combine the two approaches, this is the from Scott Jones. It is from Scott Jones, Singapore. The trajectory of technological progress, I have taken it. That is the DARPA, third wave of AI, the explainable artificial intelligence. You can see 1970s to 1990s. We were very good at reasoning when it was traditional AI, the good old-fashioned AI. From 2000 till present, specifically speaking 1980s till present, only machine learning, deep learning, statistical learning, neural networks is going on. We have forgotten what the traditional AI was. What we advocate is the hybrid from 2020 onwards. We call it the contextual adaptation, and from 2030s it will go on further towards the super intelligence, as I've just mentioned. So this is symbolic AI, then sub-symbolic AI, and what we want, what we expect is contextual computing, that is explainable AI. So what we need is, as I'm speaking it, contextual computing, that is the hybrid of knowledge engineering, that is coupling the two approaches. Let us have a look on certain scenarios. For example, yes, the symbolic and the sub-symbolic approaches, I told you, have to go together. So the symbolist approach is taken in the form of knowledge graphs by Google. For example, let us see here, if there is some noisy data that is gathered from sensors and processed through an ANN to infer some discrete information about the environment. What we do, I'm doing the hybrid. So this was only ML. How to do the hybrid? You feed this information to a symbolic algorithm to recommend a possible action. Another can be misclassification caused. For example, we have just seen the misclassification, the less probabilistic values were coming. Misclassification caused due to any form of statistical bias or noisy sensor readings. They should be overlaid with a symbolic constraint system so that we are able to ensure the enforcement of what is logically obvious. The examples include the various high-risk applications, autopilot systems, space applications, and many. The implications are very much serious actually for these high-risk applications, and very serious because then I should say recommending a wrong movie to someone. High-risk applications are more serious, so we need contextual computing. And it can be seen as a top-down, bottom-up contrast. Only top-down will not work, only bottom-up will not work. We are bringing a hybrid of both to you. One way of looking these technologies is that knowledge base, as in the semantic technologies, is a kind of top-down approach. The good old-fashioned AI is a top-down approach towards intelligence. This is how, for example, human beings learn how to perform certain tasks simply by observing their parents and copying their actions. So this is the top-down approach. The sub-symbolic approach, that is the bottom-up approach. ML techniques can be said to be bottom-up approach towards learning, where one is exposed to masses of unstructured data and they work out patterns or correlations within it. For example, this is perhaps the manner in which human babies learn to walk. How do they learn to walk? It is not by looking at their parents, as I stated earlier, but it is not by just observing their parents. but also over numerous tries they make by their own till they refine to a particular solution. So this is the sub-symbolic approach. That is the bottom-up approach. Bottom-up means 4 times, 20 times, 50 times they will try to walk, and then bottom-up they will learn. Not top-down by their parents, they will inherit in a manner walking. No, it is not possible. So let us summarize the contextual computing also here. The hybrid model combines machine intelligence with human intelligence to reach conclusions faster than is possible by humans alone, along with the explanations needed for trust in the decisions and results, while requiring far fewer data samples for training and also conversing in natural language. So also the hybrid model is able to generalize and is excellent at perceiving, learning and reasoning along with the minimal supervision required, the hybrid model of knowledge engineering. So what are the learnings from this contextual computing? We require to train our computers to what taxonomies to use, which vocabularies to use, and to explain the recommendations, the actions, the decisions, the results. For example, if a rule is some earthquake 1 to 1 has location 5 to 1 and has magnitude m, and that magnitude m is greater than 7.0 and that magnitude m is less than 8.0, between 7 and 8, then this earthquake, this particular instance needs action, humanitarian assistance 12, and this particular instance needs action, search and rescue 34. 2 types of actions are required. Say this is the rule that has been fed to the system. So for computers to be able to reason the words describing the various words in the rule, describing the objects of interest. For example, earthquake 1 to 1 is an object of interest. The properties has location, has magnitude as we have used. Their values 5 to 1, 1 to 1 and m, as well as the relationships between them, how they are related to each other, all have to be accurately defined in the system. So that system is commonly known as the taxonomy, the terminology, the vocabulary, the ontology, we say it. I have brought certain excerpts from literature for you to better understand it. This is one amongst them. While, for example, while identifying the patient treatment pairings, what will you prefer? Will you prefer solely on machine learning algorithms, or will you prefer solely on doctors, that is experts knowledge? No, we want a combination of both. That is the deep text analytics, combining the ML based and the graph based text mining along with the rules. As you can see here, we are doing ML based entity extraction. We are doing graph based entity extraction. We are doing the regular expression based extraction. And finally, the rules engine come. If we have a query, give me all paragraphs in documents talking about American private equity firms with AUM higher than $20 billion. So another small example, I should skip this. I'm running out of time. I should skip this. In the complete video, you can, when the video will reach you, you can pause and read out here. Yes, this is a bit important. I'll like to emphasize at few points. For example, you can see here that signal to symbol transformations are being done, and then those symbols, we have more sophisticated ML algorithms which are able to label those transformations, those symbols with the terms and contribute to more accurate reasoning by applying the knowledge. That is, the semantics are coming from the background knowledge. There is a semantic alignment. here the ML algorithms are working, then the knowledge, the ontologies and terminologies are playing a role. The logic, and after all, this is the background knowledge. These are the ML algorithms, and then certain rules, logic programming and reasoning with uncertainty is applied. That is, the cognitive system is applied, and finally you conclude with certain advices and explain with along with the explanations. That is explainable AI. So this is the complete AI. I picked it from Inspire and AI from 4th June 2020. You can get it on web also. Yes, this example is also important. That is AI and semantics, UML to OWL ontologies. UML is being converted to OWL ontologies. Relational tables are converted to RDF graphs, that is the semantic networks. The cognitive AI applications use ontologies in place of UML, and semantic networks, that is graphs, that is RDF, in place of relational databases to store the instance descriptions. The translation tools and workflows are very readily available. So these are the demos of those conversions. These are some publications available from UML to OWL for this author, for this particular author, and lot more. So I am very lagging behind. I will able to define semantic intelligence, and I'll try to what I want now is from my participants, I want to devote 2 minutes. My participants, please tell me. I will spare 2 minutes for this voting. You can ask me to quickly summarize the rest of the talk in rest of the 20 minutes, or you can ask me to finish till here, that is semantic intelligence. But if you ask me for this, then I will have to have one more extra session out of the 14 scheduled sessions. So please vote for a minute that you say one if you want me to finish it, so that that is also important, so that you have a view of the complete thing, because this is the complete introduction. I also vote for one. Please vote whether you want one to finish it quickly, or you vote for two just to finish till semantic intelligence. Please vote in the chat. Yes, I've got many. So I will quickly finish it. So I have come to actually to define what is semantic intelligence. In defining the semantic intelligence, we have to first of all understand what is semantics. This is a famous quote I have brought. And syntax is describing the correct format, you all know, and semantics is describing the required comprehension and the correct interpretation. Semantics is words with the accumulated knowledge and also the context. So there is a semantic gap. There exists a semantic gap in the world of today, and what is required. What is semantic gap? I'll give a fast glimpse to it. You see at this picture, pixel is the smallest unit in an image. A computer sees an image as zeros and ones. Grayscale, there is only one channel. For colored scale, there are 3 channels, RGB. So understanding the image, machine learning teaches a computer how to understand the contents of an image and identify it. Where is the semantic gap? Semantic gap is that the human looks at image as a collection of objects, while the machine is looking at it as a collection of pixels. So that is the difference in meaning between the constructs formed. This is the semantic gap. For example, machine is looking it as data, and I am is looking it as an apple. So what approach we need to follow in semantic intelligence? For example, you need to search for Tim Berners-Lee. A search for Tim Berners-Lee should fetch information from various different sources. For example, in Wikidata, the information exists, even different pictures exist for DBpedia and Wikidata for Tim Berners-Lee. In Wikidata, the information is about his sibling, about his voice, about his residence. And in DBpedia, we have information that he has 2 children, he has 2 wives, Rosemary and Nancy. So we have to bring information from both the sources and create a knowledge graph. So this is the complete knowledge graph by merging information from both the sources for Tim Berners-Lee as a search. This is what is required from semantic intelligence to build a rich user experience by combining knowledge regarding input keyword from multiple sources. So you use semantic web knowledge graphs for augmenting the ML problems with background knowledge. So this is again defining semantic intelligence, and I have done a lot of it. What is contextual computing? What is hybrid of ML and AI? Is what is semantic intelligence. Now I have different characteristics of semantic intelligence, which more or less I have already covered, and here they are in a bit of detail, and I'm not going to detail them. I'm going to just read them out. Semantically rich data we have. The focus is on the quality of data. We are fusing the symbolic and the sub-symbolic approaches. We have a semantic data model as compared to RDF, as compared to the relational databases. The ontologies and knowledge graphs are serving as the data model. The data is coming as a service using the linked data service, the LOD cloud. There is no mystery. It is a plain glass box. There is no black box. There is explainable AI. We are going towards the self-optimizing machines with a virtuous cycle that the ML is feeding the ontologies, and in return ontologies are helping improve the ML algorithms. Semantic search supports knowledge search, not only the document search. Understanding the information, the computers are made to understand the information by virtue of knowledge. There is no ambiguity at all regarding even the polysemous words or the synonymity. Connectivity is better. Information is more connectivity. The user experience is able to leverage all the available information. Ubiquity is there. There is no need for a mega database. For example, a data warehouse you can imagine of. RDF is able to facilitate the data merging from different heterogeneous data sets. It will merge the information while the data sets will remain separate at their own place. The relational and the semantic technologies, yes, they are able to work together very well. The semantic intelligence supports evolution of schemas over time without requiring all the data consumers to be changed. So we have various features with the corresponding benefits of the hybrid model, which we have already gone through to much extent. Just have a glimpse of them. Yes, let us come through certain applications and use cases. These are the various vertical applications: tourism, e-government, semantic web, and so on. So an answer is there. Semantic web is one of the applications of semantic intelligence. Widely used systems, wide range of applications are there. Google's entity search, question answering, and all. The LinkedIn knowledge graph is there. Then in research also, there are various fields where semantic intelligence is playing a role. The commercial enterprises and industry players, there are many. For case studies, yes, this also I can go through very fast. The biomedical community is utilizing semantic intelligence. It already has dozens of ontologies or knowledge graphs and vocabularies. The OBO Foundry initiative is a very good example of the same. The cultural heritage, we are using semantic intelligence. The British Museum research space .org is the best example. It is aided with the CDOC CRM common vocabulary. Intelligent virtual assistants and online search. So semantic search, I have given example to you what is semantic search. And Apple Siri is a virtual assistant. It sometimes consult semantic search engine Wolfram Alpha for communicating with the user. For example, you say, suggest me some good Italian place for dinner. Tell my husband I'll be late tonight. So Apple Siri is able to do the same for you. In medical informatics, we have a a great role in medical informatics, and it is a very good example. The Montefiore Semantic Data Lake. It is a chain of 11 hospitals that operate in some of the poorest parts of New York and I think New York. It is able to New York and New England. It is integrating all sorts of structured and unstructured data to provide good diagnosis to the patients to poor patients using semantic intelligence. The background, these are the various background vocabulary which are used by this semantic data lake in medical informatics. So the next topic is the various enabling technologies which are used in semantic intelligence. Here is a quick glimpse for the same. We have to do the combination of both types of learnings. We have to go for machine learning also, for semantic technologies also, and this FDP is for semantic technologies. So I'm briefing them here in this one slide, starting from the foundation technologies, which started from Unicode. Then XML came into being as a standard serialization syntax, then data models, then the vocabularies, the ontologies, and the inference. The various languages are there. The representation also, and this is a rule language, SWRL. Then we have query language, SPARQL. For data models, we have RDF. Then came the NoSQL revolution also. And today I say that we should use ontologies and knowledge graphs as the data model. The cost of operation is increasing as we go down, and the syntactic flexibility is also. Similarly, the effectiveness, efficiency, and the level of semantics increase as we go up in this diagram. Knowledge organization says this is a brief of knowledge, the various knowledge organization systems. We started with controlled vocabularies, the simplest knowledge organization system. We call it a glossary also. Dublin Core is an example. Taxonomies are only the hierarchical organization. Thesauri, we can have some non-hierarchical relationships also available. The Foxonomies are there. Then there are conceptual data models, entity relationship diagram, and the UML. Then we have ontology with various examples existing. FOAF, PISA ontology are the most common. So it is again the same, the importance of knowledge organization system and what it is. So if you're aware of what is an ontology by now, that is, it is a vocabulary. It is a background knowledge that is to be used along with any ML algorithm that we are using for developing our intelligent application. Background knowledge is also very important. The vocabulary you use. So there are very different variants in very different forms of these knowledge organization systems, the conceptual models. If we look based on appearance, then semantic networks are there, set of logical formulas and machine processable syntax are there. Then you can differentiate them based on the language used, based on scope, or that is the domain ontology. It is a domain ontology, or it is an upper level ontology, application or task ontology. Then based on the degree of formality also you can distinguish amongst them. There are general confusions and clarifications always. I have brought them in record for you between the knowledge base and the ontology. So knowledge base is the complete, that is the schema and the instances together. T box, A box, that is the schema, and the axioms, that is the instances, together make up the knowledge base, as most of the people say. Ontology, in general, we speak of schema, that is the T box only is the ontology, but many people say ontology as the complete knowledge base also. So there are various versions available, but we may use this terminology as most of the people say it the same. Two different A boxes may commit to the same schema, to the same ontology. For the same schema, we can have various different data sets for various different, for example, different hospitals can have their own data with the same common ontology, same common schema. Ontologies as confused with the other conceptual models. that is database schema and UML. The major difference is that these schemas are not consulted once the system is in place. UML is also built in the design phase. ER diagram is also built in the design phase of a database, and later on they are not consulted. But ontologies are consulted at runtime. So in these three manners, we can distinguish them. Then we have open and closed word assumptions. As I've already stated you that the symbolic AI works very good in closed word assumption. They assume closed word. In small closed word, they were good. But what is required is the open word assumption. And OWL works good with open word assumption. It assumes the open word, means they are open. Any new information that comes can be absorbed. Just the difference is that retraining is required. Databases, the Prolog language, assume closed word assumption. OWL makes an open word assumption. These are some examples. I can skip them for the time being. So I have already advocated knowledge graphs as the semantic data model should be used. Some example of private knowledge graphs we have. Then universal knowledge graphs, DBpedia, Wikidata, I've used it in one of my knowledge graph example also previously. Then we have various domain specific knowledge graphs, research space example, the British Museum I've already used. Look here as an example of knowledge graphs that enable intelligent applications from various data sources. Using the natural language processing, you are able to create the knowledge graph. Then using various algorithms, you are able to come up with the intelligent applications. Various application scenarios for the knowledge graphs. Let us have a quick glimpse for this also. Semantic search, if you search for Michael Jackson or any, for example, we did for I think Tom Cruise previously, you get an info box on the right hand side with the complete specific information on Michael Jackson. Then there is discovering related entities. You search for music albums by Michael Jackson and you get the related albums also side by. Factual answers you get. You ask your Google, what is the date of birth of Michael Jackson? And you get the direct answer from it now, because today it is using the knowledge graphs as the semantic data model. That is why Google is able to give specific answer to certain queries. The LinkedIn knowledge graph, the economic graph, also uses knowledge graphs. So you should use knowledge graphs and ontologies as your semantic data model, as it comes with various benefits. The semantic web vision, yes, a glimpse is required. What is semantic web vision? It is a web of machine readable data. You had web 1.0, which was the web of content. Then it is web 2.0, the social web, which connects people. Web 3.0 is the semantic web. What we call semantic web is the web 3.0 with the best information connectivity and the best semantics. But the social connectivity is a bit missing. That is why we have the social semantic web, which connects intelligence. It is the web of things. And semantic web is generally called the web of context. Now, how to achieve this semantic web vision is through web of data by being entity-centric and yes, by utilizing linked data, vocabularies, and embedded metadata. We will be able to achieve the semantic web vision by applying these in our applications. Linked open data cloud, it was this diagram in May 2007. Then various efforts joined in BBC, Google, Yahoo, and many more. And the size of LOD cloud in today's date is this much. DBpedia example, you can see this is DBpedia. I've zoomed it out for you to have a look. If you explore this DBpedia and you type in, you go to this web page, you type in Berlin and you go to Berlin immediately, you get all the information about the Berlin. You can query also. In DBpedia, they have provided the facility of the SPARQL endpoint. So you can query the DBpedia data also directly through their SPARQL endpoint. And this is that particular link. Another LOD example is the Google Knowledge Graph. I have already spoken about this. For example, you search for Delhi and you get an info box. The Google Knowledge Graph is an ontology about everything. You are able to identify entities in queries and presenting data about those entities as results, which are able to satisfy the user's diverse information needs, and of course in a single answer. BBC is using linked data. The US government's open data is another LOD example. When the US government is using open data, why not any other government? The Springer SciGraph is built upon the LOD. Some researchers might have submitted your manuscript in ACM, and they ask you to fill that ACM keywords, and they are utilizing the RDF for that. In e-commerce, Best Buy is using the good relations ontology for selling its products. I will skip the ontology learning and population difference, and I come to my last slide, that is the trends of semantic intelligence. So these are the various conferences, the various flagship conferences, I should say, for semantic intelligence, which started in 1987. Then AAAI ISWC is the top shot conference in this field. ESWC, the Ontology Summit, started in 2006. ICSC, JIST, Semantics is there. The Jovo Ontology workshops are there. In 2021, we in India have initiated one conference, the International Semantic Intelligence Conference. So all of you can also be part of it. And of course, after a week time, you will be able to very much understand what is semantic intelligence and why is it required. This is the trend of semantic intelligence in the different flagship conferences. In 2003, there was just semantic processing using metadata. The basic semantic technologies came into being and were discussed in these conferences. From 2004 to 6, simple and easy to use tags were used. Collaborative development of ontologies was started. 2007 to 10, linking started. We came up with DBpedia and linked data. And from 2011 till date, knowledge graphs have come up. And we are working with the hybrid knowledge engineering that I was telling you, and explainable AI. Now, here are some trends of semantic intelligence for the next 5 years. Yes, we have to work with the hybrid knowledge engineering, AI applications, a lot of future in healthcare. To make NLP applications smarter is one of them. Intelligent question answering, the specific factual answer we should get. From simple QA to actual conversation, that is bots are there, bots should be there. Fluently processing the domain specific natural language, AI digital personas are there, and many, many more. You have already met all the speakers through this poster also that I widely circulated, and also some of my words during the inauguration. And believe me, dear colleagues, I have tried my best to bring all the best nationals in India who are working in semantic technologies and advocating the semantic intelligence. I have collected them on one platform, and hats off to them. They have devoted time, they have prepared abstracts so that I could bring them in before the workshop start. They have devoted much time to prepare for the workshop, and also they will be delivering 90-minute session each. So I'm thankful to all my experts. Thank you very much. Here is the bibliography from where I'm able to prepare my notes for this presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I don't know whether I'll be able to take any queries or not. Yes, it is 11:30. I'll be like to take 2 to 3 queries if you really have some. Yes, we will get the recordings of all the sessions. They will be uploaded on the Atal platform. But yes, you will have to wait for a week's time for the recordings to be uploaded. I can provide the uploadings, the recordings in my Google Drive. I will share the same with you. What is the difference between taxonomy and ontology? Ontology has a much broader scope than the taxonomy. Taxonomy is just hierarchical. I had to skip that slide. Ontology has much wider scope than the ontology, than the taxonomy. There are unstructured relationships also, and based upon which language you are using the ontology, it is getting more and more expressive. For example, you start from RDF, then RDFS, then OWL, and you get better and better and better. Otherwise, in theoretical terms, ontology is just a way of representing things. Can semantic intelligence be used for parsing natural language? Yes, it can be used. Yes, it can be used. We want a specific session for this. Can you please state the difference between frame, semantic network, ontology? There is a lot of difference between frames, semantic network, and ontologies. All of them on a common platform. All of them are knowledge representation technologies used in artificial intelligence for developing AI applications. This is the similarity, but there are lots of differences, and all those differences will be uncovered gradually in this workshop, because in this workshop we will be going for ontologies only, and you will automatically understand how they are different, how the ontologies are different from the good old-fashioned AI. Actually, frames and semantic networks were used there in traditional AI. In the rich and night, they were there, but today we use ontologies for representing knowledge. Can semantic intelligence be used in insurance? Semantic intelligence can be used in any sector without fail, because we are focusing on representation and reasoning. Whatever sector, whatever industry you are working with,